Hello, everybody. Daniel Rothamel here again. Thanks for joining me in the DevOps Lair. It's dark and stormy today here in Charleston, so I hope you can see me well enough. Like I said, thanks for joining me once again. We got another screencast walkthrough today, and we're going to do something that I've done previously, but now we're going to do it better because I've learned more. Haha. So how do you like that? So for this week in our Level Up in Tech, we've been learning about Terraform. And the project for this week was to launch a VPC in Terraform with some other parameters, which I'll show you in a second. Now, if you remember, a couple weeks ago, I was learning Terraform with my mentor, Curtis Broom, and he had me do a VPC creation. That one was a little bit different than this one, and this one has some additional elements that were good for practice, and I've learned more about how to organize files and all that stuff. So I wanted to show you that and take you through this because, like I said, it's a little bit different now that I know a little bit more about what I'm doing. So let's get started. All right, let me move my head out of the way there. Boop. Okay, so let's see exactly what the instructions were. So here we are in VS Code. So these were the instructions for the launching of the VPC. So I had to use Terraform to create an AWS VPC with subnets, public and private, an RDS MySQL instance, and a load balancer. So the parameters are create a VPC with a CIDR of 10.0.0.0/16, that has two public subnets, and these are the CIDRs for that, and one private subnet, there's a CIDR range for that, and then an RDS MySQL instance on a T2 Nano, and a load balancer that can direct the traffic to the public subnets. Okay, now, so you can see up at the top here, I've got all my different files. I've put all of this in a GitHub repo, and I will show you here. So here it is. It's github.com/Rothamel1/terraform-vpc. And we have all of the files in the GitHub repo. Now, you may be asking, well, why do you have so many files? Because I learned some things from Lewitt's Level Up in Tech's resident Terraform king, Bryant Witcher, about how to organize Terraform deployments in the real world, in an actual production environment. And one of the things that he does that I think is really smart is he separates out all of his resources so that you don't have a gigantic main.tf file that has hundreds or potentially even thousands of lines of code in it. That way you can easily find and edit, if necessary, the resources that you need to find and edit. So that's what we've done here. Now, I should also mention, if you use GitHub for Terraform, which you should, you can automatically create a git ignore, which is a good idea. Otherwise, you get a bunch of errors when when GitHub pulls down your Terraform files because it tries to build the back end, and you don't need to do, obviously GitHub doesn't need to do that. So you can put that git ignore on there and ignore the certain files so that you won't get errors in GitHub. Also, and we'll talk about this later, for security purposes, you can ignore your secrets file. And then, so we've got the README, which I haven't updated as of the recording, but I'll update. And then we have the different files for our different resources. So these are the resources that we're going to need. Obviously, we need to create the VPC. Oh, so first, in our providers file, this is all we have in the providers file, the AWS provider. And then that variable is defined here in the variables file up at the top, the region. So we've got the var .region in there. Now, for the VPC, we're going to create a resource. This is AWS VPC. This is the name of the VPC. And the CIDR block is that CIDR range that we were given in the beginning in our instructions. So you can see I have a variable for name, but we don't need it. And then the VPC, or the CIDR range. So that's in there. And then we need the public and private subnets. So here's the public subnet. So this is how we reference the VPC that we're going to be in, which is the one that we're creating. Here's the CIDR block for that subnet, the availability zone it's going to go in, and the name. And then this is the second public subnet. Again, same VPC, different CIDR range, different availability zone, and the name. And then here's our one private subnet, again, attached to our VPC, and the CIDR range, and its availability zone. Then we need an internet gateway, So here's how we create the internet gateway. So again, we just need to attach that to the VPC. And then we needed that load balancer, you'll remember. So for the load balancer, it's an application load balancer. Here's the name, here's the resource, here's the name. The subnets, so it's going to be deployed over the 2 subnets. So here's the subnets we created, right? Remember, public subnet 1, public subnet 2. That's the IDs for those. And we're turning the delete protection off so that we can easily destroy this when we get to the end. But there's the load balancer. I've already shown you the variables. And then the RDS database. So here that is. So we've got an AWS database DB instance. We're going to call it LewittDB. We're going to give it 5 gigs of storage. It's going to be a MySQL database. That's the MySQL version. It's an instance on a T2 micro because we want to keep it free. And now here's where things get interesting a little bit. The username and password. So in Terraform, you can use, if you don't put this in there, it's going to prompt you when you go to create the database to create a username and a database, or a username and a password, I'm sorry. Obviously, that's not the most secure way to do it, because if you put that username and the password into your console, into the CLI, then it could be seen by someone. The other thing is, it will get displayed on the outputs of your plan, your Terraform plan, when you apply it. So what we need to do is 2 things in order to make this more secure. The first is when we set these variables, we need to add. So here's the variable for database username. The description is a database administrator username. The type is a string. And we want to make it sensitive so that it doesn't inadvertently get displayed anywhere in the console by Terraform. So we set sensitive to true, and we do the same thing for password. But then this still doesn't prevent us from inputting it at the CLI. And if we input it at the CLI, somebody could potentially see that. That could potentially end up in the real world, and we don't want that. So what we do is, in order to do this, there's on the documentation for Terraform, they have a great little page about protecting sensitive input values. And so what we want to do is, so it walks you through database credentials. This is a little tutorial to go through database credentials and how you can protect them. So it goes through the creation of the variable and setting it to sensitive, changing that in your resource. And then this part is what we want to do. We want to set values with a .tf vars file. And we want to create a file. They called it secret. I called mine secrets. Secrets.tfvars. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the username and password. We're going to put that in our tf.vars file. And then we're going to have Terraform. And that's only going to be stored locally on our local machine. We're going to be the only people. You're going to be the only one. I'm going to be the only one on your local machine that has access to that file. And so then when we do Terraform apply, we tell Terraform to reference that file for the secret that it needs for the username and password. So that way it doesn't show up in the CLI. The only place where that username and password exists is in a file on our local machine. And hopefully you've got your local machine locked down as much as humanly possible. So that's how we're going to keep that information secret. Now, if you're doing it this way, and you're using GitHub or some sort of Git repository that's out in the world, then you need to make sure that your secrets.tfvars file is part of gitignore so that you don't load your secrets onto the internet into a GitHub repository that who knows who has access to it. So that's one of the things you actually have to add to the gitignore. You'll see I added it here. So these were automatic from GitHub when I did the gitignore template, and then I added the secrets, my secrets.tfvars file, so that when I pushed my files to the GitHub repository, it ignored my secrets.tfvars file. Okay, so that's how everything gets set up. So let's go back, and then we'll see here. All right, I've already done Terraform init in this directory, so we don't have to do Terraform init again, but we can do. No, I got to get my keyboard went to sleep. Okay, so we can apply and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do Terraform apply, and we're going to do variable file equals secrets.tfvars. That's how Terraform knows to get the values for that variable from that secrets.tfvars file. So we do that, and it's going to say these are all the things that it's creating. So there's the VPC, there's the subnets. Here's the load balancer. So the internet gateway. Here's the database, and you can see in here it doesn't have the username. See the password? It says sensitive value, and the username it says sensitive, so that you can't see that anywhere. So we will say yes, because we wanted to create all this. Oh, and I can show you here in the secrets file. Because I'm going to destroy this in a second. Here's where we set that username and the password. So you set it here. You leave that file on your local machine because your local machine's locked down. You don't share it with anybody. Make sure it's in git ignore if you're using a GitHub repo. So we go down here. We say yes. And it's going to go ahead and spin up all of our stuff. This takes a couple minutes. So I'm going to pause the video, and then we'll come back once everything's been created. Okay, there we go. We are back, and you can see it took exactly 5 minutes. The database usually takes the longest there. So it's 5 minutes to create that database. It took us 5 minutes to create everything. And actually, you know what? I was just thinking about this. Let me know what y'all do while you're waiting for your Terraform resources to apply and destroy. I usually just, hang out on LinkedIn or something. But I'm wondering what people do. Go get a drink, get some lunch. Depends on, especially people out there who have big builds. So there we go. After 5 minutes, we've got 7 resources added. So now we can verify that they have in fact been added. We know that they're there, but just so you can see, if we go to my management console here for AWS, we can see our VPCs. If we go to VPCs, there we have it, the Lua Terraform VPC, just as I named it. That was added. There's the CIDR range we were supposed to have, and the route tables and everything, so you can see everything's in there. Here are our subnets right here: public subnet 1, public subnet 2, private subnet 1. We can see our internet gateway, the Lua internet gateway, and then obviously one of the most important aspects of this whole infrastructure deployment was the RDS database. And once this goes a little bit, there we go. We can see our RDS database is right there that we created. So it's available. It's on a T2 micro just like we asked for. So there we go. Everything's there. Our Terraform deployment was a success. And then to destroy it, you have to do the same thing with specifying that secrets.tfvars file. So you have to do Terraform destroy var file equals secrets.tfvars so that it destroys the database using the admin name and password that you created. So I hope you enjoyed this. That was a little remix of launching a VPC on AWS using Terraform. And this time we added the database instance into it and did some cool stuff with our username and password using a secrets.tfvars file. So I hope you enjoyed it. You can check it out. Check out all the code on GitHub. And as always, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Hit me up on Medium. Whatever. I'd love to connect with as many people as humanly possible. I hope you enjoyed this. And until the next time, take it easy.